Howdy, this is Professor U the Guru. Our topic today is how I quit smoking after a 26-year love-hate relationship with that sly cigarette.
The full, rich flavor comes clean through to you for real smoking enjoyment.
I remember when I was a little boy, I used to go to church with my parents, and then afterwards it was social hour, so all the big people would stand around drinking coffee and eating donuts and smoking cigarettes, because back then lots of people smoked cigarettes. You smoked cigarettes at church, not during the service, of course. That would be disrespectful to God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. But afterwards, it was okay, and I remember I enjoyed the smell of a cigarette. In fact, in an open place, not inside, because that's kind of nasty, but in an open place, I still, if I see someone smoking, I got nothing better to do, I'll go stand by that person, and I just think it smells better than incense, considerably better than most incense.
Gee, we ought to do something, Fred. Okay? How's about taking a nap? I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break. That's it!
But as I grew older and more self-righteous, it occurred to me that people who smoked cigarettes were not treating the rest of the world properly, and we were all going to die tomorrow of somebody's secondhand smoke. Most of the world, well, I mean, the part of California where I lived, it was somewhat frowned upon unless you were smoking American Spirit cigarettes, which was, engine tobacco, it's had an engine on it, so that's better, also twice as expensive. So, and then they say it's organic. Well, okay. If you're going to hate tobacco, you might as well hate organic tobacco, and I hated smoking. So if I hate smoking so much, how did I start? Well, one day I was sitting next to this guy, speaking of the Holy Ghost. Kim believed he was the Holy Spirit. I've met all kinds of people, And he smoked cool, so one day he offered me a cigarette. I said, oh, what the heck, I'm kind of bored. So I smoked it, and it made me dizzy. Well, at that age, anything that made me dizzy was great. So what the heck, I got some of my own cigarettes.
Taste me, come on and taste me.
I started off with cools. Fortunately, I got off the menthol pretty quick and switched to just regular old, what do they call them, coffin nails.
When you change to Winston, you'll change for good.
I recall enjoying cigarettes for 2 weeks and hating them for 26 years. So many times I tried to quit, and after 26 years of being a moderate smoker, something like, 10 cigarettes a day approximately, after 26 years and many failed attempts, dozens, if not hundreds, I'm sure it was over 100, maybe over 200 times that I tried to quit because I truly despise, I hated the taste in my mouth. I had to brush my teeth after every cigarette. I found it an embarrassing habit. I had to go hide in order to do it. I had whole entire jobs where my boss never even knew I smoked or pretended he didn't know. I'm sure my secret was not very well kept because I probably smelled bad, but
I'd walk a mile for a camel.
Yeah, I did not like smoking, but after 26 years, I did give it up, and I'm going to tell you how I did it. And I'm not even going to say, will this work for you? Will this not work for you? Well, there ain't no reason to not try. That's what I'd say. In fact, it occurred to me just the other day, somebody was telling me something about what happened at their school, and I got the impression that somebody was losing points every time they tried. And I want to let you know that every time you try to quit smoking, is a good thing. You can't try too much. And I failed so many times, and I still kept trying because I still hated it. We're going to get to that, and in the meantime, I'll give you a little build-up to what led up to my actually succeeding at giving up cigarettes about, say, approximately 21 years ago. And I haven't puffed on a cigarette since. If I see a perfect cigarette on the ground, yeah, I used to pick those puppies up. Boy, I tell you, if I see a perfect cigarette on the ground, I just smash it with my foot. I have no interest in cigarettes or tobacco. That was 21 years ago that I quit. So here's how I did it. I'll get to that soon. Our story begins in a rich suburb of Portland, Oregon, where I lived in the ghetto, which was 3 blocks long, and the house I was living in was a cute little cottage with 2 tiny bedrooms. And of course, since this was 2004, let's just call it 2004 for fun, the rent, even though it was very small, was pretty big. And I was just a pizza boy. I mean, 47-year-old pizza boy. I'm just guessing what my age was, but I was the sort of person that I couldn't stand the thought of people seeing me smoke. I didn't smoke in the pickup truck when I was delivering pizza. I didn't smoke at work at all on most of my jobs. But yeah, I was a pizza boy, part-time manager sometimes. And one day I was talking on the phone to a friend of mine who lived in California, a longtime friend who I'd known forever, ever since we were young. And I was complaining to her that I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to find a roommate to help pay the rent. And she went on and on. She liked to be on the phone. I'm not a phone person. I like to get off the phone. She liked to be on the phone. She liked to be on the phone as long as possible. She didn't actually have a limit on how long she liked to be on the phone, and she loved to talk. So she's going on and on. Oh, trust your guardian angel. Your guardian angel's going to help you out with this. You're going to find a roommate, blah, blah, blah. She's going on and on and on. Okay. I'm trying to say, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, now, okay. You're trying to lead up to that. Maybe we should hang up the phone one of these minutes, hours, or days. And finally, I managed to get the phone hung up, and I set the phone down on the whatchamacall. This is when we had cordless phones, but before we had cell phones. Well, I mean, long before I had a cell phone, put it that way. But I set it down on the little machine there, and my hand was still on it, and it started ringing. And I picked up the phone, said hello, and some feller on the other end said, well, this here's Drew Wood, not his real name, and he said, I'm an inventor. I'm working on air. Well, I thought he was calling me about my project or something, because I'd had a long time, many years of project as an inventor or a researcher working on compressed air. And it turns out he wasn't working on compressed air. He was working on air cleaning machinery of some kind. But he was looking for a place to live, and he saw my ad. So I told him, get your butt over here right now, because I've got thousands of people trying to get in here, and you're 62 years old and you say you're a stable person, so hurry up. I didn't say it that way. I said, yeah, okay, come on over as soon as possible.
By thunder, Jed, that is good smoking.
Now try it this way, Granny.
So I'm sitting in my living room about 10 minutes later, and here comes this funny-looking dude, 62 years old, patches on the elbows. He wore one of those professor jackets with patches on the elbows, like I should get me one of those, but it's too hot. I don't wear a jacket here ever, here in the Philippines. And he had, kind of a curly brown hair with a little bit of gray in it and combed straight back. It kind of looked like a used vacuum cleaner salesman, or maybe an encyclopedia salesman, or a Fuller Brush salesman. You remember the Fuller Brush salesman from when we were kids? I mean, when I was a kid, yeah. Well, nowadays, if you go ding-dong on somebody's door, they probably have to talk to the police. But in those days, when I was a kid, we had people go door to door. And Drew, he kind of looked like one of those guys. But he was smiling. He was nice. And so he moved in and solved my problem. He was a bit surprised to learn after he moved in that I was a smoker, because the house didn't smell bad. I did all my smoking outside in the back with, a couple of bottles of craft beer. I like Hefeweizen and IPA especially. India Pale Ale, I don't know what they call it that, but a couple of craft beers and a couple of rolled cigarettes, because I rolled my own American Spirit tobacco. Never could stand filters in my mouth. I just didn't like them. I wanted to smoke them. If I was going to smoke, I was going to smoke, and smoked. So I rolled my own, but most of the roll your own tobacco was terrible. Burned my lips. That drum, ugh. It just burned my lips really bad. I couldn't stand it. American Spirit was better, and it didn't have any chemicals in it, so I still hated it. Drew was quite a character. He was a health food nut, and he was just a real interesting dude. Talked with a loud voice, never sat down in the living room ever. He spent all his time in his room when he was home, but he had an office somewhere in an industrial park. Somebody let him use one of their offices for his inventing project and his research. And he actually even paid me for a couple of days to help him with that. But he was quite an interesting character. He hated squirrels. He called them tree rats. He told me the tree rats are eating your strawberries. Well, they didn't eat them all. And he couldn't stand if I said fairies. I said, I'm not weeding that part over there because I leave that for the fairies. And he said, you mean elves? He got angry if I ever said fairies. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter to me. So I said, okay, elves, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to mow your lawn and, clean up the weeds in the garden, but you're supposed to leave a little wild patch for the fairies and the elves, so they have a place to dance at night or whatever they do. I think they dance around in circles till they fall down or something. I'm not sure. One of his favorite topics was his favorite movie. That would be It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And he'd be standing in front, because he never sat down. He had a bed he made himself with old wooden pallets. One time in the middle of the night, I heard this. I was asleep. I heard this crashing sound. Oh, man, I went over there. Are you okay? He said, yeah, my bed collapsed in the middle of the night. And so the next day he borrowed my hammer again and got some more nails and put it back together and made it a little better this time. But he had to have his bed a certain way with his head elevated. Another time I was in Trader Joe's, which is a grocery store for people who think, most food is boring, especially American food or something. Anyway, I got some cookies at Trader Joe's once, and I was looking at the ingredient list, and it said ammonia. Ammonia in cookies? Yeah, I looked like 6 times. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, one day I was in Trader Joe's, and there was Drew. He was buying something, and there was no one else in line, so I walked up to him and touched him on the arm and said hi, and he ignored me. It's like, interesting person. Yeah, he just completely ignored me and walked out after he paid for his food. Well, okay, whatever. I guess he didn't want to talk to me in public for some reason. I don't know. He's a little odd bird, but he was nice. He was very nice to me. He only got mad at me once the whole time we lived. But he was a germaphobe. He used a paper towel in his hand before he would touch a light switch. And he said, well, you got to get rid of that sponge. That sponge is nasty. Don't use sponges. I said, oh, yeah, no problem. I agree. It was here when I moved in. I just haven't thrown it away yet. So he was certain that we didn't need ants. And I said, okay, we'll get rid of the ants. We keep everything clean, wash the dishes, and spit spot, like Mary Poppins used to say. But yeah, his favorite movie was Mad, Mad World. He'd be standing in front of me telling me about his favorite scene, and he'd just start laughing. I mean, I never saw anybody in so much pain from laughing. He couldn't breathe. He'd be grasping and clutching at his ribs on both sides. He laughed so hard.
Well, that's nonsense. Anybody can fly a plane. Now here.
When he tried to tell a story of a mad, mad world, he just couldn't stop. He couldn't. He really loved that movie. He'd probably be, I suppose, about 85 by now, I suppose, if he's still around. Drew told me that he used to smoke. He looked me in my eyeballs and he said, I used to smoke. And my wife used to complain and nag about it, and it didn't help. So he said to me, I'm not going to nag you about it because it won't help. And that was the last time he mentioned it. And a few weeks or months later, we didn't live in this house together very long, but after a while, I got a bad sore throat, which meant I was going to be sick for 2 weeks, or, snot burgers, coughing and hacking and phlegm and all that nasty nonsense. I finally got over it, and the next day, I got another sore throat. I mean, I had been feeling pretty chipper for about 24 hours or less. Next day, I got another sore throat, got sick again, phlegm burgers again, the whole shooting match. And suddenly it occurred to me, I mean, I had tried everything. I read NLP books. I made myself hypnosis tapes, blah, 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 blah. Nothing even came close to working. I might have been able to quit for 2 weeks once, something like that. That's not very good. That's not going to save your life.
More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
I tried having every attitude in the book. I seriously despised smoking cigarettes, just hated it. I felt guilty, I felt nasty, I felt bad. I didn't like the way my clothes smelled. I had a somewhat limited choice of women who would put up with it. So I'm out here drinking my beer, smoking my cigarettes, doing my crossword puzzles, and it suddenly occurs to me, I've got another cold, bad cold. That's 2 in a row. Never happened. I got to tell you the story. Not so long before that, I had started getting tiny bubbles, like the song, tiny bubbles in the wine, make you happy all the time. I was getting tiny bubbles coming out of my lungs. Tiny bubbles, I mean, like, I'd say a millimeter in size, but I call them bubbles because I experimented. They come out as a cluster, like a cluster of grapes. They're all stuck together. I experimented with them. I tried to smash them in between my fingers, and they popped like balloons. Tiny, tiny bubbles. I went to a doctor and I said, "What is these tiny bubbles?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." She showed them to someone else, and they said, "Well, they didn't know either."
For filter and taste, Kent satisfies best.
I'll accept that.
But I did have a lucid dream about the tiny bubbles, and in this dream I was going to see a doctor, and he called them metatarsals. Metatarsals, that's not even a word, but it was a lucid dream, and I remember it. I also remember that after the doctor seen the little bubbles start growing and turned into a monster or something, it was scary. I woke up, so I looked up metatarsals just to see if it was a word, and it was not in the dictionary, but the next word over was metastasis or something. I looked at the definition. It said something about that stage of cancer where, the cells start dividing and multiplying and growing or something. I don't remember exactly, but some sort of nastiness. So I'm back there doing my crossword puzzles, which I was addicted to, but I had to drink beer and smoke cigarettes at the same time, and suddenly I realized what I had to do. Suddenly I knew the only thing that would work, and I just knew this. It just fell into my mind. I knew it, and there was no denying it, and there was no other way. I had to do one thing and one thing only. Nothing else. Nothing else. No distractions. No trying to change your attitude. No listening to hypnosis tapes. None of this horse hockey. I had to do one exact thing perfectly.
So round, so firm, so fully packed.
I had to stop talking to myself about cigarettes and smoking. Completely. 100%. 110%. I put my cigarette out, washed it down with a little beer, and walked away from cigarettes forever. I was married to that shit for 26 years. I never took another puff.
And you know what else? No cigarettes, right? All right, kids, come here. Come here.
But I can stand next to somebody smoking outside. I love the smell of someone else's smoke. I've never even been tempted. And what I told you, that's what I did. And that worked. Of course, now I could talk about cigarettes all day. Not that I'd want to, but I could if I wanted to. There's no temptation now. I stand next to somebody and breathe their smoke. And I like the way it smells, but I'm not going to cry about it when they leave because they can't figure out why I went over and stood next to them. So that's how I did it. I refused to entertain any thought at all about the topic of smoking or cigarettes. And if you think about it, which maybe you shouldn't do, because that's a conversation in your head. You don't think about cigarettes. You don't think about smoking. You just stop completely. You never mention it to yourself again. Of course, the thought's going to pop up, but you just cut it off. Just cut it off. Empty your mind. Nothing better than an empty mind. You know what I mean? Especially if you're the president. Yeah, a lot of people got to be presidents that way because they're like, nature abhors a vacuum. So the pests that be have a nice empty place to fill up with instructions. But that's a different topic. What was I going to say next? Let's look at my notes here. I'm not wearing my glasses. What if the world sucks? Go for a walk in a park, mall, or... that's my notes from a different movie. Well, Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. I remember that from when I was 4. I had an interesting dream last night. I have these recurring themes, One of the recurring themes is a house with a secret place. And this house ends up having rooms that you'd never know were there, but you have to crawl through some secret place to get there. This is called the Urumara. That's the transition zone between one state of being and another, one state of mind and another. Check that place out, and that's basically how you get to lucid dreams and any dreams, actually, from a waking state, out-of-body experience. I call it unworlding. But in this dream I had last night, which I would call a lucid dream according to my definition of lucidity, but not according to the official definition of lucidity, is highly relevant to me. I was excited about it when I woke up and remembered the dream, so that to me is lucid. In this dream, I was in a house where if you opened up this closet, there was a dresser inside, and then you moved the dresser away, and it had been hiding a door. And if you open the door, you'll go into another closet, and there's another dresser, and you move it, and there's another door, and you open the door, and you go through it, and there's another dresser, and you move it, and behind it there's a door. You go through the door, and in this way, you find that the house is much bigger than you ever thought it was. Obstacles are tests, and things happen for a reason. If by chance you're like I was and you have a problem with guilt when you smoke a cigarette, never mind. It won't help you. Don't fight the guilt. Don't resist anything. I told you what to do. Now do it. This is Professor U.D. Guru. Thanks for showing up. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Tell St. Peter at the Golden Gate that you hate to make him wait, but you just got to have another cigarette. Smoke, smoke, smoke. Oh, St. Peter, I sure hate to keep you holding that gate open, but I just got to have another drag over this cigarette. This pretty thing.